Play action. Carr on the move. Tosses it, and it's caught!
Commissioner, obviously there's been a lot of moving parts and continuing to move between the soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders and the stadium. Most recently, the stadium lease agreement was signed between those two parties. What does this mean, and why is this such a major milestone in this whole process?
The stadium lease, and it is very, very important to the process. The stadium lease authority was signed recently contingently signed between the Raiders and the stadium authority, which calls for the operations of the stadium, the funding of the stadium, the debt reserve on the stadium, how other events could potentially come in there. It's really a stadium event company is going to run the stadium that can be owned either by the Raiders or they could sub that out to another operator. But the NFL needed that lease signed in order for them to keep moving forward. We've got a lot of benchmarks as we go along in this process that have to be done, and this is one that they needed for their May 23rd meeting, I believe it is, with the NFL to have a lease in place. Now, part of the agreement was that this is contingent upon the development agreement, the high impact project, the joint operating agreement with UNLV, and some other documents that are going to have to be signed. But this was a crucial part of the situation.
One of the things that did come up, as you said, is a community benefit agreement. Now, I think the people here in the community then are going to be very interested and see what happens. That, gosh, what do we gain on this? Is that kind of what that is all about?
That's kind of what this is, and the community benefit agreement deals a lot with employment and with subcontractors and vendors that come into the stadium. There's going to be a lot of opportunities that are there, and one of the reasons people were so happy about the stadium coming and so supportive, as was I, is the jobs. And we want to make sure that those jobs stay local, that some of the contractors that are hired are going to be local, they're going to be minority contracts, they're going to represent a diverse part of our community, the ones that are going to be chosen. The same is true for the vendors, the one who's going to be selling the coffee and the beer and the pizza and hot dogs. We want to make sure that we get our share of minority and local businesses in there, similar to how we have the operation done at the airport, that they've been so great about making sure that there's an integrated part of the local community in there, and thus the community gets a benefit from the jobs.
Those are many of the things after the fact. Obviously, on the upfront side, Local 857, the members, you've probably become very intimate with many of them. They've been part of this process. This is a Super Bowl win for our construction industry, for that local, and for anyone in the building trades, right?
Yeah, Labor's 872 has been instrumental from the beginning in terms of, being advocates of this project. They've got oftentimes barbecues before the stadium meetings. They took their trailers and their fire truck that's been wrapped up to Carson City to advocate for this. They've had a huge turnout at every single meeting that we've had, and the recent one where we signed the lease was no exception. They had them with the clap sticks and making noise and the signs and the hard hats, and they're all in on this project. And they're in one, they're Raider fans, but most importantly, it's a tremendous amount of jobs that are going to go to their members, the workers, the day-to-day men and women that are going to be in the trenches, actually building the stadium from the ground up to its fruition, and it's an exciting thing to see and to say that you were part of something of that magnitude.
Commissioner, also out of the lease agreement, something else that is coming up is the UNLV lease agreement. That's, in a lot of ways, seems to be kind of a forgotten component of this stadium. Coach Tony Sanchez and the Rebels football team, this is a great tool and something great that is needed for our football program here.
Absolutely, and I've spoken to Coach Sanchez, and he certainly hasn't forgotten, and the team hasn't. It's extremely important to them. Sometimes it gets lost in the overall idea of the Raiders coming here, but the Raiders have been extremely supportive in terms of UNLV football and having their own branding and identity in the stadium. One of the next documents that are going to have to be signed is this joint operating agreement with UNLV. That'll call for the actual details of the sharing of the stadium as we move forward. How you're going to do that on a game-by-game basis, if they're going to get a percentage of the concessions, if they're going to try to outlet the concessions on their own. I mean, those are decisions that UNLV and the Raiders are going to have to discuss. That's better for both UNLV and the Raiders in terms of economies of scale and vendors that are brought in and whatnot. But from Coach Sanchez's point of view, and he and I have discussed this, when you're bringing in a high school recruit and these kids have been superstars in their states and in their counties and in cities and whatnot, and you take them out to Sam Boyd, it's one thing to show them the stadium, and this is where you're going to play. If you can imagine what it's going to be like to bring a 17 or an 18-year-old out to a 65,000-seat dome stadium where we're going to have a Super Bowl in a couple years and say, this is where you're going to play your home games, it's going to be impressive to those young men that are their potential recruits for UNLV. So if UNLV ever had a chance to get elevated to a Power 5 conference, one of the big conferences that make their incredible amounts of resources, revenue, this is going to do it. I mean, it's elevating their facilities to a whole new level, not just for the Rebels, but for all the teams that are going to come in here and play.
Commissioner, when we're talking about the stadium location, I-15 and Russell, I think, except for one person down the street here was slightly against that location. Everyone else is pretty much in agreement that this is the right place to be at. But even at the same time, Commissioner, you brought up the same concerns that I'm sure people of the public do, and the simple ones, parking and traffic.
You're absolutely right. And traffic we can solve. Traffic can be solved by, ingress and egress changes, putting some on-ramps and off-ramps into the parking lot to get people there. But there is an issue as it relates to traffic, and the Raiders have been incredible in terms of dealing. They understand the problem. They're trying to get a grasp right now of what the demographic of the fan is going to be. How many of those 65,000 people are going to be walking across the bridges from the Strip, that are going to be people that flew in to come to the games, that are going to buy tickets even though they might be living in Oakland now or in LA, but they'll buy tickets and they'll be staying in a hotel for the weekend to come to the game. How many of them are going to be that? How many are going to be locals that are going to be driving from Spring Valley, from Green Valley, from Summerlin to get to the game? How many of them are going to be driving? How many of them are going to be taking mass transit or renting a cab or an Uber or that sort of thing? And then how many spaces are technically going to be needed in order to park those cars? And traffic we can resolve. Parking is going to be something that they're working on. They're looking at a lot of options now, purchasing some other land and satellite parking and bringing folks in on the shuttle. I know some of the hotels, the local hotels, have been interested in having their own shuttle to attract people to go to a Green Valley or a Red Rock and have breakfast there and enjoy yourself and maybe gamble a little bit and then get on the bus and come into the game, and they'll take you back to Red Rock, and then you get in your car and you can go home. So it'll make it easier. So they're trying to put all of those ingredients together to see exactly what's going to be necessary, but they understand the challenges that exist, and they're working hard with the county to come to a resolution.
And this is what we do, right, Commissioner? I mean, this is going to be on, if you're going to church on Saturday at noon and thinking you're normally going to go down the I-15 in Russell, you might want to rethink that and go take a different way. It's going to change the way we drive, as we do on New Year's Eve or when there's a marathon. This is what we do.
That's exactly right. That Strip is it's a commodity that we can market. It's a venue, and you have to obviously adjust your traffic, whether it's, we've got race cars going up the Strip, we've got, parades of vehicles on the Strip, we've got marathons on the Strip. We close it for one purpose or another. We've had, a presidential debate here, and you saw what that did to traffic. The rodeo comes and we have that situation. That's a regular occurrence here, and we're going to have to get adjusted to it. And people are going to know that when there's an event at the stadium, whether it be a UNLV football game or a Las Vegas Raider game or a big concert or soccer match or that, you might want to avoid that area if you're not going to that event. And that's just kind of the way it is. It's kind of like you avoid the spaghetti bowl during rush hour, Monday through Friday. It's not so bad if you go at 9 o'clock at night on the weekends. There's not a problem. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to take some adjustments. T-Mobile was a perfect example of that. I mean, when they've managed to really refine that, where they can get folks in and out of there relatively quickly, and it's been safe and it's accommodated everybody. So we'll get it done the same with the stadium. It's just going to take a little bit of effort and practice and some study to come up with the best way.
What are we going to learn from the arena, as you say, the T-Mobile Arena, and the Vegas Golden Knights professional hockey team that are going to start here in October? And eventually these teams will overlap for a few months during the season. Do you see that, any problems in there, Commissioner?
I don't see any problems there. I think it's just being more of the synergy that the two teams are going to bring together, and they're going to feed off each other a little bit. It's one thing, and this is what the MGM folks have just been so incredible in the T-Mobile. A crowd that you attract to a concert, for example, on a Saturday night or Friday night is different than you're going to attract to a Golden Knights game. When you have Golden Knights, you're going to get a lot more locals that have bought season tickets. They're going to be coming from our community to get there. And that's going to be a good example. We'll have a couple of years of that built into this study before we actually have the football stadium. How are you going to get those cars in and out of the T-Mobile parking lot? And they're aware that it's something that they have to be cognizant of. They have to make accommodations for as they move forward. And I don't know the percentage of the Golden Knights fans that are going to be coming off the Strip and the percentage that are going to be coming from our neighborhoods, but we're going to have that data in order to analyze it. It's going to help us with the football stadium.
And in the future now, Commissioner, you and the Board of County Commissioners, and I guess all workers in Clark County, what types of things will be required of all of us that will help make this happen as far as the Raiders and the stadium go?
Well, from the county point of view, it's, the development agreement is difficult. It's time consuming. I wouldn't say difficult, it's a good word. There's going to have to be a lot of negotiation in terms of what they're responsible for. And once we get that done, and the high impact project, which is what this is because of the amount of trips and the size of this venue that's going to exist, we're going to have to deal with the permitting and the inspection and the county employees, the county family. We've had a couple of meetings with the Raider folks that have just been absolutely incredible. I mean, there was just a huge connection between wanting to be a part of building a stadium and saying that you were there and you made some small contribution to it. It's one thing when you're part of building a hotel or a shopping center or whatnot, but stadiums don't come along very often, obviously, and this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for most people to have just a small part of it and to know when you went there that you had a little bit of a part of it. So it's going to take a lot of extra work on behalf of the county. I know our county family is up to that. We're ready to meet any challenge, and it's a tight timeline, but I'm confident we can get it done.
Carr has time, fires, caught, touchdown!
Commissioner, you've lived here for decades, as have I. We're sports fans. Many teams have been talking about this for literally decades, stadiums and teams coming here. Now it's really happening. This is really great.
It's beyond great. It's a dream. I mean, it really is. And I'll go back to the same thing. But for Bill Foley, I don't think we'd have ever gotten the Raiders. The fact that the NHL was willing to look at an investor that put in $500 million to buy an expansion team and to invest that money and the name of the NHL, that brand, which is so important, and to tie that to Las Vegas says a lot about our community. And once the NHL did it, the NFL suddenly, the glass ceiling was broken, and they were willing to look at it. And you look at NHL teams, NFL teams, there's only 32 of them. I mean, there's only 31 other cities that have one of these franchises, and there's no talk about expanding and bringing any more of them. And it just elevates you to a new level. And instead of having to root for the team where you came from, which is what everybody here has done because Las Vegas is a melting pot, Clark County is for other states, we're going to have our own brands. You're going to be able to be Golden Knights fans and Raiders fans, which is our community. Prior to this, we had the Rebels, which is great, but it's not at the professional level. So it's something to be very, very proud of, and I think it'll cause an awful lot of community pride and energy.
A few years from now, I look forward to seeing you in a split jersey with green and gold on one side and silver and black on the other. You're still a Patriots fan and a Patriots or Packers fan, owner, I should say.
It's still I still own part of the Packers. I have my one share. That was a clever gimmick that they did. That's going to be a tough game, when they come in. I think they're planning. I think somebody told me it'll be in 22, 23 that they'll be playing here. That'll be a real tough one. But until then, I'm rooting for the Raiders every weekend.